Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 13th of July. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Negotiators at the Iranian nuclear talks in Vienna are reportedly poised to put the finishing touches on a sweeping agreement with world powers, although there's still no deal as of this hour. Here with more is IBA's diplomatic correspondent, Ellie Wogelenter.
On the 17th straight day of this round of talks, and quite possibly the last day, expectations were soaring that before the day is over, diplomats would let the world know of a historic agreement that restricts Iran's nuclear program, lifts the punishing international sanctions, and potentially alters the way Iran interacts with the rest of the world. Diplomats close to the talk said there were contingency plans for an announcement ceremony today if the negotiators sealed an agreement. The United States, Britain, France, Germany, Russia, and China have given themselves until the end of today to reach a deal. If they fail to get one by midnight, they will need to extend the terms of an interim nuclear deal with Tehran that has already been extended 3 times in 2 weeks. Another option is to walk away from the negotiating table, something both the Americans and Iranians have said they are willing to do. They could also suspend the talks for a few weeks or months, though Iran has said it opposes this. European diplomats have been signaling that a comprehensive agreement is virtually a done deal, waiting only for approval from the capitals of the negotiating countries. But for all the optimism, there were indications that negotiations were having trouble getting over the final hurdles. An Iranian official said there is no talk of extending talks for a 4th time, but he injected a note of caution. Everyone is working hard to get to yes today, but political will is still required, he said. Meanwhile, in the Knesset, Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon addressed the emerging nuclear agreement with Iran today, saying the deal is a bad one and ignores the fact that Tehran continues to develop long-range missiles and sponsor terrorism. Speaking at the opening of a Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee meeting, Ya'alon said that even if there are some last-minute improvements, the agreement as we understand it is bad, allowing Iran to legitimately be a nuclear threshold state with all that implies. The defense minister warned that the agreement could spark an arms race in the Middle East, noting that Saudi Arabian, Egyptian, and Turkish officials have talked about the need to arm their countries. Ya'alon said Iran is mostly concerned with when and how sanctions will be removed. When they have more money to pay for these activities, Iran will be a greater threat not only to Israel, but to the whole world. Ya'alon concluded that the bottom line is a bad deal is coming, and after it, we will have to be prepared to defend ourselves on our own. Erin?
Thanks for that report. Well, if and when an Iranian nuclear deal is reached between Iran and the world powers, the U.S. Senate will have its say regarding ratification. And even before the deal is signed to the emergency agreement, congressional leaders on both sides of the aisle are raising objections.
Well, look, we already know that it's going to leave Iran as a threshold nuclear state. We know that. It appears as if the administration's approach to this was to reach whatever agreement the Iranians are willing to enter into. So I think it's going to be a very hard sell if it's completed in Congress. There was another option here. I would like to remind people, rather than spending multiple years trying to get one of the worst regimes in the world to agree to limit their nuclear capability, we could have ratcheted up the sanctions even further, because that's what brought them to the table in the first place. But the administration chose to go down this path. We're going to be interested in things like, will the Iranians reveal their past research and development? What have they done in the past on this subject? Is it verifiable? Will we be able to look at all of their military bases? And by the way, even if you're satisfied on all of that, Brett, there's all their other collateral activities, what they're up to in Syria, in Lebanon, in Gaza, in Yemen.
Which is not a part of this deal.
Which is not a part of it. And apparently the ballistic missile capability, the ability to launch such a weapon to a target, is not addressed as well. So this is going to be a very hard sell for the administration. They'll have to get at least 34 votes, assuming a resolution of disapproval passes. If the president vetoes it, he'll have to get at least 34 senators to go forward.
Well, you know where the head count is, just looking at what you look at in the Senate. I mean, you say it'll be tough, but where will the red line be, for example, for Democrats who have said and expressed concern about this potential deal?
I think they're going to have the same concerns I just outlined. And I know there'll be a strong pull not to go against the president on something as important as this is to him. But I hope there will be enough Democrats willing to look at this objectively, look at the facts. Is this a good deal? Is this likely to achieve the outcome we had hoped for? If they can bring themselves to do that and make an objective evaluation of it, I think it's going to be a very hard sell.
Well, it makes me anxious because what a deal looks like is incredibly important. And the problem here, George, is that we have gone from preventing Iran having a nuclear ability to managing it. And what we are doing is basically rolling back sanctions for not rolling back Iran's illicit nuclear infrastructure, but rolling back sanctions for verification.
But according to the administration, putting it off for 10 to 15 years, can any other policy do better than that?
Well, I think we started off with the wrong premise. We did not test the premise, can you get some of that infrastructure to actually be removed? Because at the end of the day, that's where we started. We started off with the premise that Iran could not keep its nuclear infrastructure, at least all of it. So we still have a plutonium reactor, reconfigured, but still a plutonium reactor. We were originally told by Secretary Kerry that is either going to be dismantled by them or it will be destroyed by us. We have a uranium enrichment deep inside of a mountain. That doesn't happen for a peaceful civilian program. That's going to stay, again, reconfigured to less uranium enrichment. So the question is, even President Obama said that under this potential deal, in 12, 13 years, they will have a pathway towards a nuclear bomb should they choose to do so. And how this deal structures our ability to make sure that if that's the best deal you're going to get, what type of verification inspection regime, is it still going to be any time, any place for the International Atomic Energy Administration? What type of sanctions relief are we giving? And at the end of the day, I hope that notwithstanding a deal, that the president makes a very clear statement to Iran that as it relates to the future, we cannot accept Iran having a nuclear weapon, period. That's the premise we started on. That's the premise we should finish.
Sounds like you're not going to support it.
Well, I'm going to judge it when I have all of the elements of it. But obviously, I think we should have started a different way. I'll judge the agreement based upon what it is. But we have to make very clear that there is a deterrence in the longer term. Because if not, in 12, 13 years, we will be exactly back to where we are today, except that Iran will have $150 billion more in its pocket and promoting its terrorism throughout the Middle East.
In other news, Greece reached a deal with its European creditors this morning to avoid an exit from the Eurozone. The agreement calls for the country that is already reeling from harsh austerity measures to cut back even further in exchange for more loans, which, without its financial system, faced certain collapse. The parliament must now convene in Athens to adopt the reforms detailed in the latest proposal. Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras has been holding out for better terms throughout the week so that he could win the legislators' backing, even as an imminent economic collapse grew closer by the day. The agreement follows months of often bitter negotiations and a summit that stretched from yesterday afternoon well into this morning. The breakthrough finally came during a meeting between Tsipras and French President François Hollande, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and European Union President Donald Tusk. The threat of expulsion from the Eurozone placed intense pressure on the Greek leader to accept politically unpalatable belt-tightening measures to acquire the country's third bailout in 5 years. The commitments include drastic pension market and privatization reforms that must receive parliamentary approval by Wednesday. In return, the 18 other Eurozone leaders will hold talks on the newest bailout program aimed at staving off the imminent collapse of the Greek financial system.
After 17 hours of negotiations, we have finally reached it. Someone can say that we have an agreement. Leaders have agreed in principle that they are ready to start negotiations on an ESM program, which in other words means continued support for Greece. There are strict conditions to be met. The approval of several national parliaments, including the Greek parliament, is now needed for negotiations on an ESM program to formally begin. Nevertheless, the decision gives Greece a chance to get back on track with the support of European partners. It also avoids the social, economic and political consequences that a negative outcome would have brought. I welcome the progress and the constructive position of Greece that helps to bring back trust among Eurozone partners.
Canadian-Israeli Gil Rosenberg has returned from Syria and Iraq, where she served for 8 months on the front lines with Kurdish forces fighting the Islamic State. Rosenberg told Ynet's Roei Kais that she will continue to promote the Kurdish cause.
I came from Iraq about a week and a half ago. I was in Paris for about a week and a half, and still wasn't sure if I was coming back to Israel. I had all my gear with me, thinking about going back because it's hard to leave. Like, it's hard to leave your friends behind. You know, like it's something that's on my mind constantly. Like I said earlier, I'm sitting at the Sheraton on the beach in Tel Aviv, and my friends are getting mortared at the front line in Nineveh, you know, in Iraq.
מתי עזבת את סוריה?
Syria I left in January.
אוקיי. לעיראק?
Yeah.
ומה הייתה? גם סיבה, כלומר, סיבות ביטחוניות כאלה ואחרות?
No, it was political. It was just their politics were different from mine, and it was difficult to listen to. I don't particularly like people blaming the U.S. and Israel for Daesh. You know, it's something that I feel very strongly about. I know that those two governments are not the ones that are supporting and training and providing for Daesh. So.
אבל יש חשיבה כזאת.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people think that, sure, but that doesn't mean it's true, and it's very frustrating to listen to. And those are like the only two countries that I really care about, so it's hard for me. So, so I was in Iraq from January until now, and fighting with the Assyrian Christians right alongside the Peshmerga. Our front lines are 600 meters apart from each other, and it's the political situation's changing. You know, the Iranian involvement and them making forward advances. It's the dynamics are really changing, and I felt like it was time for me to leave.
מתכננת להישאר בישראל כרגע? את לא מתכננת לחזור בקרוב?
No, I'm here for now.
ומה תעשי עכשיו?
There's definitely plans in the works, maybe switching to more of an activist role as opposed to being a frontline fighter. Raising awareness about, you know, the Kurdish cause and the minorities in Iraq.
Video released by the left-wing B'Tselem NGO is raising doubt over whether the fatal shooting of a teenage Palestinian earlier this month violated military regulations. Binyamin Brigade Commander Colonel Yisrael Shomer maintained that he opened fire because his and other troops' lives were endangered when Mohammed Hani al-Kasbah hurled a rock that smashed the windshield of his Jeep in Aram near Ramallah. But the footage appears to show Kasbah running away after the vehicle came to a stop with soldiers in pursuit, although the subsequent chase and gunfire took place outside the range of the camera. B'Tselem charges that even though there is no dispute that the passengers were initially endangered by Kasbah's actions, that threat ended after he fled the site, rendering the shooting illegal. The Tel Aviv District Attorney's Office today indicted 18 suspected gangsters on a wide range of offenses as part of the crime sweep launched over the past few months. Crime bosses Yitzhak and Mayor Abergil topped the list, along with Avi Ruchon and Moti Hassin, for alleged involvement in the attempted bombing of rival criminal kingpin Zev Rosenstein in December 2003 that instead killed 3 passers-by, as well as drug trafficking, conspiracy, tax fraud, and money laundering. Several defendants have turned state witness and are cooperating with authorities in the investigation. Rico Shirzi and one other suspected criminal are also slated to be formally indicted today. An Israeli family got a dose of American jurisprudence when a Detroit judge ordered 3 children of the divorced parents, Omer and Natalie Tzimchoni, to be held at a detention center for refusing to meet with their father. Following a media frenzy and protests, the kids were released from lockup and sent to a Jewish summer camp where both parents can see them on visiting day.
From juvenile detention to summer camp.
That is the decision from Judge Lisa Gorsuch, who's been under fire for locking up two brothers and a sister who refused to see their dad, basically. Will Jones live now in Pontiac, where this rather unique compromise was made. Will, they don't get to go home yet.
Devin, they're heading to summer camp. Mom was in the courtroom. Dad called in from Israel. The judge said her main focus is those children, but it was clear she wanted to set the record straight about her original decision to send those kids to a detention center.
Despite the claims of recent media coverage, this action was not carried out as a punishment.
For the first time, Judge Lisa Gorsuch responds to the outrage over her decision last month to place these three siblings in Children's Village for refusing to spend time with their father. The children are 14, 10, and 9.
It was also a remedy the court took after 5 years of litigation and orders designed to foster relationships with both parents.
The parents have been at war for 5 years, and their children have found themselves right in the middle. The children's advocate described in court how it has affected the children.
You got to give mother credit. Whatever she did all these 5 years, she's been successful at it. And she's been on a campaign, and she's won to some extent, and she has damaged these children.
Maya Simone's attorney requested the children be returned to their mother. Omer Simone's attorney and the children's advocate wanted the children placed in a summer camp. The judge ruled to place the children in camp. Mom became emotional after she left the courtroom.
I'm happy that the kids are out, and I hope I can go see them now.
Mom and Dad will both have supervised visits at that camp. This is far from over. This summer camp is just a temporary arrangement, so we're likely to see more activity here at the courthouse.
A new missile defense system called the Sky Shield is now being installed on the Eilat-bound commercial airlines in response to rising concern over potential terror attacks by the Islamic State-linked terrorists operating in the Sinai. Arkia and Israel Air jets have been outfitted with the device, which is a pod hooked on the underside of an aircraft that works by combining lasers with a thermal camera capable of actually altering the trajectory of ground-to-air missiles with what the Defense Ministry says is 100% accuracy. The system was designed by the Elbit Defense Company after the failed missile attack on an Israeli charter flight out of Mombasa, Kenya 13 years ago. The government is estimated to have invested at least $76 million to further develop the Sky Shield for placement on non-military aircraft to be used on a case-to-case basis. Meet Kaya, the latest addition to the Israeli first family. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu posted a photograph of the 10-year-old rescue dog on his Facebook page, writing that his son Avner asked to adopt her after hearing that she was about to be put down. According to the Prime Minister, over the weekend his family received her with warmth and love. Fantastic. And now taking a look at local finance, the shekel today put in a mixed performance in foreign currency trading, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange were up across the board. Here's a look at the afternoon numbers. The IBA weather team tells us we can expect mostly sunny skies and a slight rise in temperatures tomorrow. Here's the forecast at home and abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. We hope you'll join us again tomorrow when Laura Cornfield will be here to bring you the latest breaking news from Israel. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a great evening and shalom from Jerusalem.